Drew. It's good to be with you guys as we talk about what does it mean that together we are the answer to Jesus's prayer when he prayed that they all may be one, as you and I are one, Father. And that's obviously a huge prayer, and it's a huge idea. And so as I was praying and thinking about it, I really felt led to think about methodology. That is to say, how do we pursue unity? How do we pursue becoming an answer to Jesus's prayer? I've been thinking a lot about the interchange and sort of the interplay between power, place, and names. That is, those who have power in an area, whether it's cultural, whether it's economic, political, those with power in a place, they're the ones who get to name or rename it. I am a church planter. I am white. I am a man. I am not from New York City. And I'm not ignorant to any of the cultural and racial dynamics and saying that I feel called by God to join his work in this beautiful city and specifically in this wonderful borough, the best borough, Brooklyn. And so then I was thinking through how do these three things work together? It's not a modern notion. It's actually very biblical. Like Jesus, when he's talking to his disciples, Acts chapter 1, right before he ascends, what does he say? He goes, "You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. You will be empowered to take my name into every place." The question that I wish the disciples had asked but didn't is, well, how should we go? How do we go? Dr. Willie Jennings wrote a phenomenal and phenomenally depressing book called The Christian Imagination, where he looks at sort of the Western lens of colonization that all of us to one degree or another have inherited. And he looks at, in the 1500s when Europeans entered these new worlds, how they saw a place, how they exerted power and ended up naming and renaming. And essentially he goes, it's all a matter of how we see. What they saw, they did not see a functioning community. They did not see home. They saw underdeveloped land according to their logic, a very capitalist economic gospel logic. And therefore, by extension, they saw underdeveloped people in need of salvation. They exerted a power according to what they thought was best in a place. And by extension, they ended up renaming it and renarrating its story. This is the question at the heart of church planting, I believe. How do you see a place? Or in pastoring, how do we see a place? How do we bring Jesus's name? How are we empowered to bring Jesus's name to people? Because church planting can and does often, unfortunately, look like colonization, a settling in and a wielding of power to re-narrate a place and a people. Again, though, I don't think we're unique in this. I think it's very biblical. So I want to take us back to a story in Genesis 32. So Jacob and Esau, you guys, I'm assuming you guys know who these two are. Jacob is the younger brother, and Jacob is one who sees opportunity and wields his power quite deceptively to steal from his brother. He's stolen Esau's birthright. He's stolen his blessing from his father. Then he was kicked out. He went to go find a wife. And then a really interesting story with Laban, his father-in-law, how he kind of was deceptive and stole more flocks and herds. Interestingly, his name, Jacob's name, means the supplanter, the overreacher, the one who takes what isn't his. Perhaps the case could be made Jacob was the Bible's original colonizer. I don't know. But he is someone who takes what isn't his. And he's done that. He's going back home, and word gets to him that his brother Esau is coming out to him, and he doesn't know if Esau is angry, if he's forgiven. He doesn't know. So he splits up his family, and he spends the night at the Jabbok, the river, before he crosses over further in his journey. And what we read is that during that night, a messenger of God wrestled with him until daybreak. And just out of nowhere, this messenger is wrestling. And actually, the passage, he writes in Genesis 32, when the man, the messenger, saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Now, some interesting things in the Hebrew there. The word for wrestle is avak, which means dust. So to wrestle with someone is to get dusty with them, to join them in the dust. And when it says he dislocates the hip, The word for hip is the same one used in the Old Testament for loins. So the hip region, figuratively, was like a man's procreative power, the power to create and name something new. Dislocate is yakah, which is used 8 times in the Old Testament, and half of them are translated impale. So you could make the case that to dislocate the hip is to impale the loins. Not a fun image, but you could make that case. Jacob is used, here's what's going on. Jacob is used to using his power deceptively to take what isn't his and thereby creating and narrating something new. And in this moment, when his loins are impaled, his hip is dislocated, in this moment, he's lost his power to create and name. So for the rest of his journey with that limp, he must enter not as the powerful one, but as the powerless one. And in fact, it's after this moment that Jacob receives a new name himself. His name is changed to Israel. You will be empowered, says Jesus, to take my name into every place on the earth. How do we go? To which the prior question probably is, well, how did Jesus bring his own name into the world? What was his methodology? How did he wield his power into this new place to give new names? And you read from Philippians 2, Jesus' methodology. In your relationships, have the same mindset as Christ. Being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself further by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Jesus had power he could have wielded and re-narrated the earth. He just didn't use it. Instead, Jesus joined us in the dust of our deceptive power. He wrestled with us. The divine wrestled with the human, and neither overpowered the other, which is a beautiful image that Jesus is joining us where we are. But that's not even enough, because we humans have been barbaric to each other. We have stolen much from our brothers and sisters. So God's power went further. Not only did he not choose to use it, but instead, God's power was impaled on a cross. How did Jesus bring his powerful name to the earth? By letting us name him. We named him the crucified one. He came not to overpower, but to let us try to overpower him. He came not to see us as underdeveloped humans who needed to get into shape, but as sons and daughters of God lost in our sin, whom he needed to join and to love. And then, what do we read in Philippians? Then Jesus got a new name too, the name above every name. That at the name of Jesus, the resurrected one, every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that he alone is Lord. Leslie Newbegin talks about how most religious founders, they bring bodies of knowledge, but Jesus didn't. He did not bring a body of knowledge. He brought a body, his body, a crucified body. And see, I think therein lies the distinction. The colonizer's mindset says we are empowered to bring a body of knowledge about Jesus's name. We bring that to the earth and you learn it. We force you to change and then you are saved, according to our perverted logic. The church says, no, we ourselves are the body. We're not bringing it, we're bringing ourselves. We ourselves are the body that God has empowered by naming us the impaled ones. We are the community that all have dislocated hips. And therefore, we trust the resurrection to come, who will join the world in their dust. And in so doing, the world hopefully will see something truly creative and find a new name. When I was starting Hope Brooklyn, I was aware of this as much as I could be. And my wife, Anna, and I were not from the city. And so we were aware of this interplay. And we just didn't want to misstep. We didn't want to perpetuate. We didn't want to use our power deceptively. We just wanted to move slowly and be invited in. And I think what that meant was needing to be impaled to a certain degree, needing to have it stripped from me so that I could be further invited by God in his story that he was already writing. And so in my story of starting Hope Brooklyn, I was impaled, in fact, by someone on this call right now who spoke earlier, the godfather of Brooklyn church planting, Edwin Cologne. You already heard him share earlier, but a phenomenal church, Recovery House of Worship. I met him through Drew early on, and I knew I wanted to work with, wanted to partner together. And by the grace of God, Hope Brooklyn and our house, we have partnered in the past and all sorts of stuff, and I pray we're going to do that for many, many years to come. But in the moment where I was impaled was we were still, Ann and I were still living in Queens. So talk about not even being from New York, but we're also starting a church in a borough where we currently don't live. So we're like, Lord, what are you doing? We were in Queens and we were starting to build community in Brooklyn. And I was at Yayo's with Edwin, which is his favorite restaurant. And if you ever go to Yayo's, he will try to have you do the cafe con leche, which, you know, swears is the best thing ever. I told him then, I'll tell you now, it's just coffee with milk. No offense to Yayo's or Dominicans anywhere, you know, but we were telling him of how, you know, we're starting to build community. We're looking for a place to gather and aware of all these dynamics. Edwin looks at me and goes, we got space at Recovery House. Why don't you use Sunday nights there? And I was stunned. I was like, I'm a white guy from the outside. Why would you open up your space for me? And so I'm like, Edwin, that's incredibly generous. How much? And he goes, nothing, man. We got space. You need space. We're working together in this. This is the kingdom. And it was at that point that God wrestled with me and impaled me through the person of Edwin Colon, stripped me of whatever power I thought I had. And I knew that we at Hope Brooklyn, we would not enter as powerful ones, but as powerless ones. We would wait. We would move slowly. We would bring Jesus's name as the impaled ones together, join the story he has already been writing for a long, long time in this borough. And not to take from Brooklyn, but to be taken into her, not to name Brooklyn, but to be named by her. We would never pray, God, give us Brooklyn. We would pray, God, give us to Brooklyn. And before I could cross the Javik in this story, in this new chapter of my life, I needed my hip dislocated. I needed to receive a new name. And so for the rest of that summer, Hope Brooklyn began to meet at Recovery House of Worship. And we continued trekking down from Queens to Brooklyn with open hands and dislocated hips. Thank you.